Testing. We're good?
Am I on? Yeah, good.
Okay. I love watching that video. It's really great to see all the cool applications that are coming out since the 22 months that we released .NET Framework 3.0 and the first version of WPF. Some really cool applications, some really cool user experiences that are out there today, and then a bunch more to come. My name is Kevin Jerstad. I'm the Group Program Manager for WPF. And with me today is?
I'm Ensign Chow. I'm Senior Program Manager for WPF.
And today we're going to be covering the WPF Roadmap, which is a broad run-through of a number of the things that we're doing in the platform, both what we just have done recently, and we'll talk a little bit about that, what we're releasing today and making available, some things you'll be the first to hear about, as well as the things that we're doing in Visual Studio 2010 and 4.0 and a few things beyond that. And then I want to leave plenty of time at the end to take your questions because, WPF is all about getting your feedback so that we can make the right sort of trade-offs and decisions for the upcoming versions. So just briefly, our mission for WPF when we were conceiving it way back in 2000, 2001 was to build a thoroughly modern platform that would take advantage of the best capabilities of the PC. Whether it's hardware acceleration, large screens, the innovations in Windows around speech and ink and some of the stuff you saw this morning, as well as graphics and media, that sort of thing, and putting it all together in a highly integrated platform to make it easy for you to build rich, great user experiences. Because, and back in 2000, 2001, the whole proposition that UX mattered was an open question. Not everybody thought that UX was something that applied to all applications. They thought, that's great for some consumer apps where you have flying pixels and stuff, but do you really think that UX matters, user experience matters for other types of applications? The answer is absolutely yes, because when you talk about user experience, it's not just about flying pixels. It's about quality. It's about meeting users' expectations. It's about productivity. It's about differentiation, the things that matter to you, the things that matter to your customers, and delivering on those things. And our goal with WPF is not just to enable great things, but to enable for you to do that at rapid speed, and deliver great user experience at prototype speeds, because after all, iteration is how you get to that great user experience. So when we were conceiving WPF, we were talking about the workflow and the design experience, and that's why we did things like XAML and the markup language, and why we're continuing to invest in tools.
So fast forward to 2008. Over the last couple of years, we're actually seeing developers building these really compelling large applications on WPF and really taking advantage of the user experience that WPF enables. So. So this is one of my favorite examples, the Lawson Smart Office suite of applications. So Smart Office is the front end to Lawson's suite of enterprise applications, including enterprise resource planning, supply chain management, customer relationship management. And for a typical user in this application, they spend their whole day in the application. So this is really, to them, an information workspace. And it's very much like a full-screen application, like the Windows shell, except that this application helped them to manage and organize their tasks and their workflows. So let's take a look at the application. So the user interface, Lawson calls it the canvas. And on the canvas, you can customize the canvas with a number of widgets. For example, you can bring up the sales forecast, travel expense budget, as well as general utilities like news feed and calendar. And as I move these gadgets around, you can see that there's a very dynamic layout, and as well as kind of magnetic areas that helps the user organize their desktop. And I also want to point out all the subtle design points that they've added in, such as animation, transparency, that really gives you a well-rounded user experience. So let's take a look at some of the real applications functionality. So you can see that there's a number of tasks here that has been minimized. So a typical user will be working on a number of different workflows, and it's very important for them to be able to quickly switch between them. And things like a live preview here really gives them the context to be able to switch between these complicated workflows very easily. And they take advantage of WPF's kind of visual brush to really show you the real live preview of what forms and lists that you're looking at. Like a lot of enterprise applications, the Lawson application is really centered on forms and data grids, to present the information as well as for data entry. But being a primary applications for the user, being able to personalize this experience is very important to their productivity. So one of the things that they've done is they've incorporated a zoom function into all their forms and grids. And you can see that, depending on the readability of the text, how much information you want to display, as well as your personal, visual acuity, you can really kind of choose different levels of zoom that kind of best suit your application. And they're really taking advantage, this type of zoomable user interface, they're really taking advantage of WPF's vector rendering as well as automatic layout to be able to do this in a very easy fashion. Let's take a look at another example of the types of UIs that they provided. I'm hovering over the these buttons, and instead of just a typical text tooltip, they actually give you a full preview on what forms they're going to bring up. And this really helps people learn to use this complex application. And we also see that, just like the shell, they have, quick user interface to let you switch between, different tasks that you're doing. And here it shows, how the integrated 3D experience can really kind of bring together the application. And it's really great to see, Lawson's really taking advantage of WPF to build this really distinctive and differentiating user experience and really enhancing the end user's productivity. So.
Yeah, I love that application. They've really done a good job with that. When we did .NET Framework 3.0, our first version, we introduced a number of new capabilities and concepts and so forth. And it was a real game changer for client development on Windows. Not everything was there, though. When you're creating something as big as a client platform, you not only have to do the new stuff with the value propositions, but you have to also cover the things that have been invented and done over the last 15 years. And you have to do them with all the tools and other tools and other process localization, globalization, all those things that you need to have a complete platform. And so since releasing 3.0 in 2006, we've been hard at work. Both the WPF team and the .NET Framework Grader team has been flat out working to improve the platform and the tools. In 2007, last year, we released .NET Framework 3.5, which was a pretty significant update to WPF, as well as Expression Blend, first version of that, and Visual Studio 2008 with our first WPF designer experience built into Visual Studio. And then in 2008, just a couple months ago, we released the Service Pack 1, or SP1, for 3.5, which was not your typical service pack. We put a lot of work into that thing. And so looking it all up, we had a ton of improvements. We're basically starting on our 4th release in as many years for WPF. And looking back at 3.5 and 3.5 SP1.
And there's a lot of stuff here, and we're not going to go through this in detail. I can read out every line for you if you want, but I'm not going to do that. There's a lot of material about the changes, improvements that we've made in Service Pack and 3.5 online already with Windows Client.net. And please go ahead and check it out. I think we've come a really long way in kind of improving the platform since we first released in 3.0, and we're really pleased with our progress, and with Service Pack 1, in particular. As Scott pointed out earlier, with Service Pack 1, you can get up to 40% performance improvement just right off the bat without actually doing anything with the application.
That's particularly cold start.
Cold start time.
Yeah.
We're really grateful for all the kind of feedback that the developers and input developers have been using our platform over the years and giving us to it, and that really helps us improve on the application on our platform.
Okay, so we don't have time to go into detail of all the things that we've done. There's actually a ton of content up on WindowsClient.net/WPF, hands-on labs, white papers, samples, all kinds of cool stuff. Just want to talk about one thing for a second, though. When we released V1, we did not have data grid support. We hadn't done the work to enable large data sets and inside of WPF in that kind of data grid experience. So in 3.5 and 3.5 SP1, we went to work to make sure that we could do that in a highly performant way. So this is just a quick little example where we're going through a list box with standard virtualization, scrolling through 1,000 items, and we get to do that in 3.4 seconds roughly. And the second list box is what we have in 3.5 SP1, scrolling through the same number of lists or same number of rows, and we're doing it in less time. And similarly, when we released or we coded up WPF's data grid, which is available today, we brought that performance improvement to our data grid as well.
And a lot of what we did in Service Pack 1 was really to allow us to scale out these large-scale data sets for controls, such as what you saw items container recycling there. So let's take a look at the data grid. We're announcing that we're making the data grid available today. It's a full-feature data grid, and let's start with the example on this particular application where we want to display a list of voters, and we have a very simple kind of a voter collection which randomly generates plain CLR objects populated with names and addresses and stuff. And in order to put this into a data grid, we're only adding one line of code, which is data grid, and we're setting the item source to the resource, the voter list resource. If we run the application, you can see that through automatic generation of the columns, we automatically populated the data grid, based on the public properties of the data that you're using. And what's really interesting here is that you see that the columns are all sized based on the size of the data automatically, and you also see all the different data column types based on the data. The Boolean properties are mapped to checkboxes, and if we go to the party, that's a enum field, and we automatically put a combo box into it.
I think we're changing the election here. I'm not sure.
And like any data grid, we have all the typical user drag and drop of the columns functionalities as well as resizing. So, obviously, you don't want to just put up any data grid for your data. You really want to go and customize your data. And this being a WPF control, being able to style the control based on whatever content you want is obviously very important. So let's go ahead and do some customization of this data grid. So we start by setting a number of properties on the data grid itself. We're setting the auto column generation to false. So we want to be able to specify exactly which columns go into the data grid. We're changing the selection mode to single, and instead of forcing it that you can't select more than one item at a time. And the selection unit to full row. So every time you click on any of the cells, it selects a full row, pretty much like what you expect, types of capability in data grids. And finally, we're gonna set the alternating row background. So let's take a look at how we define the individual columns. So in the columns collection, we have a data grid text column that basically binds to a name, and you can specify the exact header text, and you can data bind to that as well, just like what you would expect with WPF applications. We have the combo box column. This is a little bit redundant, but it does show that you can customize the items inside your combo box. In this particular case, the automatic generation would have populated that anyways. Next, we go into we look at the donation property. Donation property is meant to be a currency property, so give money. So we want to format this cell with a dollar sign, and we use a string format in data binding. So that makes it very easy to just format your cell based on some string format. And if you look at the street column, we specify the width to automatically stretch. And when we run the application, you see that this is the only column that resizes as you resize the whole window. And let's go down to the bottom here. We have a template column. A template column basically allows you to put whatever you want, into that cell. In this particular case, the data template just simply put a button. But you can imagine you can put, video. You can put, 3D rotating cubes or whatever else you want. And that's really kind of the power of WPF. You can see that you can use all sorts of different types of UI elements into your application, which you typically can't do. So this is a result of that configuration. You can see the street column basically is the only one that kind of resizes automatically. So what Kevin just did there was selected one of the items, and here we add for every row you can specify a row details template. So as you click on the row details expands, and with the data template you can basically specify whatever you like in that details. You could even put another data grid in it if you want something that looks like a hierarchical data grid. So
go ahead. So there's a full talk on the data grid. I forgot to mention this. There's this little doohickey down here in the right-hand corner. If you see that, that's actually referencing a related session where you can get more content, more detail on the thing that we're talking about. In this case, data grid. There's a talk, PC45, that will go into more depth on data grid. And as Scott announced this morning, the data grid and the toolkit is available right now up on Codeplex, and that includes data grid, calendar, date picker. That's live and released today. You can now put that with your 3.5 SP1 applications and ship it. Okay, so another challenge that we have with any new platform is getting that onto users' machines so that developers can target the platform with greater confidence. Since releasing, in 2006, obviously we had 0% penetration there. But since 2006, things have been going on pretty well. We're now up to around 40% as a percentage of US PCs, and that number is increasing every month and going very well. And of course, as Vista and Win 7 continue to pick up, then those things will, or the adoption continues, that will accrue penetration for WPF as well. But we're also, for Windows Update, we are rolling out in the next month or so the Windows Update for users with machines with .NET Framework 2.0, 3.0, and 3.5. They will automatically be updated to 3.5 SP1. And so those numbers will go up quite a bit, and a large number of people will have 3.5 SP1. As well, for users that have vanilla XP machines with no framework whatsoever, we did some work in SP1 to make that install experience much better. And we created this thing called the client profile. And essentially it's a subset of the client framework that's designed for folks deploying client applications on users' machines. And it's around 28 megabytes, so it's much smaller than the full framework. And we did a bunch of work around setup itself so that the setup experience is faster, more reliable, and it's just a better user experience overall. We looked at things like what's the fewest number of clicks that we can require on the part of end users. And so we got it down to 3 clicks. You have the thing that says, I want to run this code, and then you have the EULA, and then the continue button, and that's it. And then we have one integrated UI, one window throughout the entire experience, so you can compose your framework excuse me, with your application and the associated sort of dependent bits. You can put that in one package, and we'll install all of that in one window so that when that's done, the next thing the user sees is the application, your application. So we have a lot of focus on the click to app pixel time, and we're going to continue that focus in 4.0 and make that even better in 4.0 and make that apply to more configurations, all configurations in 4.0. In terms of brandable deployment experiences, when you create that package, you want to basically let the user say, forget about the framework and forget about even your app install and just focus on, I want that application, I want that user experience, and we're trying to make that as seamless as possible. So I'm happy to announce that today we have available the configurator for building those packages, the sort of a WYSIWYG designer, if you will, for building those packages and customizing those packages up on Codeplex today, and you can go check that out. We very much like your feedback on what you like, what you don't like about it, because we're going to continue to improve that. It's very important.
Another common question that our developers ask us is that, well, WPF is great. We love to use it in our user interface. But what about our million lines of existing code? What are we going to do about that? So as Scott Guthrie showed in his keynote, Autodesk has just released AutoCAD 2009 using WPF to build some of their UI features. And AutoCAD is a really good example on why we think that our ability to interoperate with different UI technology is so important. So AutoCAD is one of the largest and mature commercial applications for Windows. They have something like this is their 17th version, and they have something like 8 million installed seats. And so you can imagine how important it is for them to be able to fully leverage their existing code base. So they were inspired by the Office 2007 ribbon to revolutionize their command UI. And so they have went ahead and built a WPF-based ribbon that they intend to reuse across their product line. And this really helps them help the user to kind of organize and have access to their commands. And I had a chance to talk with their developers, and they're really taking advantage of XAML and our data binding to allow their product designers, who are not developers themselves, to be able to kind of build out a really kind of interactive user experience with the ribbon, because they can put all sorts of custom controls and that type of stuff on the ribbon, and they can do that without kind of involving the developers. So this is really a really good productivity gain and workflow gain for their team. Scott, in his keynote, also pointed out that Visual Studio is also going to be using WPF, to build the new shell as well as the source code editor. And they're very much, they're very much like AutoCAD in the sense that, we spent many years, building up, the code base for Visual Studio. So as you can see, using WPF is not an all-or-nothing proposition. We really kind of try to have a very seamless interop with, all the existing UI technologies like Win32, HTML, and DirectX. And we're continually making improvements in those areas. And we also benefit from the fact that, like, the CRR team is doing a bunch of native and managed interop improvements for the upcoming version of CLR4. And if you want more details in that, there's the TL34 session that you can go to. AutoCAD went ahead and built their own version of the ribbon with their special requirements. But if you want to build an application that uses the ribbon, we actually have a WPF version of the ribbon that is compliant with the Office Fluent UI guidelines, as well as the Windows 7 theme. And this is available now today as in a CTP form as part of the WPF toolkit. And again, if you want more information about how to use the ribbon and how it integrates with your application, we have the PC45 session where Samantha Durante and Mark Wilson-Thomas will talk about kind of building data applications on WPF.
So putting it all together today, we have the data grid, the ribbon, calendar, all these controls. We put together some pretty compelling applications with just a few lines of code. It's pretty amazing. So very excited about that. Please do check that out.
And we're not done, with all the stuff that we're putting into the into the toolkit. We're also making the WPF version of the Visual State Manager available in the WPF toolkit. So the Visual State Manager is a new innovative mechanism that to allow designers to build control behaviors as a very well-defined set of states in Expression Blend. And it's also the only control model in Silverlight. So, with the Visual State Manager release, now you can just take your Silverlight control templates and move it into WPF. So that's a really cool story. From the WPF perspective, the Visual State Manager is complementary, to our existing control infrastructure with triggers, and it's optional. But as you can, but I'll show you this, this demo where it shows you how it really helps you from a designer perspective to be able to, build a really interactive experience with, in Expression Blend. So for this demo, I've taken Peter Bloy's Blend demo of a Twitter application that he built for Silverlight, and I moved it over to WPF. And in fact, I copied over his XAML files. But I have to confess, he built this real working application. I just wanted to show the UI, so I kind of stripped out a whole bunch of the network code. So this is really kind of the WPF version, but without the actual connectivity over to the Twitter surface. So I'm going to start by kind of running the application, and you can see the types of interactivity that this application has. So I'm running Blend here, and I'm just going to start the application. So as I start the application, you see there's an animation transition to bring in the login screen. So first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to give it the wrong password, and I'm going to click login. So you can see that we're now connecting to the over the network, so so that the form itself was grayed out, and now the network came back and says, look, this is an invalid password. So I actually see the error text there. Now I'm going to go ahead and actually enter the right password. And now I hit enter, and now it's going to go back to the network. And now it comes back and says, hey, I'm logged in, and I'm transitioning over to the to main screen. So you can see that this is a really interactive and user experience. So let's see how we actually build this in Blend. So the way that this application is organized is that we basically had a one user control that's the main screen. As I edit this control, you can see how we're organizing this. So if you have used Blend before, you notice that on this particular screen, there's an extra panel that you probably haven't seen before. And that is the states panel on your left here, right over here. And the states panel is how you configure the Visual State Manager. So the state panel shows the various state that the current control can be in. And for each of the states, there's a storyboard associated with it. And you can add and remove the states. So let's take a look at the let's take a look at the various states and the storyboards associated with them. So there's always a base state. So this is when nothing happens, this is what the control looks like. And let me go and bring out the timeline here for the login state, for the logging in state. So let's start with the show login actually. So here I start out with the with the bird on top, and if I actually go and run through the timeline, you can see that I'm basically translating the bird into view. And if we look at the logout state, which is the other kind of the logged in state, which is the other complicated scene, you can see that you can see in the timeline. Let me configure the screen to make it a little easier. 1024 by 768, you can only do so much in it. So here, my timeline is basically a storyboard that shows the various types of transformation I'm making to the UI. In this case, I'm making the main screen, opacity to 100%, and I'm translating and scaling the bird. So you can see how the various states very naturally maps to how the designer thinks about the user interface. So let's take a look at it from the developer perspective. So we've seen the designer workflow. So let's go over to see what the developer has to do to support this behavior. So in order to transition between the different states, we are basically responding, in this particular case, to events fired from the connection. So in this particular example, I have a singleton connection object that has a bunch of events. It says, when logging in happens, it'll fire that event. When there's an error, it'll fire that event. When the login is successful, it'll fire that event. And then the handlers themselves are really, really simple. And you can see here that for logging in, all I'm doing is I'm telling the Visual State Managers that for this particular control, I'm going to the state logging in. And the last parameter here says true, which is that I use transition. The Visual State Manager automatically, as you go from state to state, obviously some of your properties have mismatched. It will automatically transition between the properties that are different. So you can see how Visual State Manager really helps you, build complicated and interactive user experience in a much easier way than we have before. So as I mentioned, Expression Blend had a session on how to use the Visual State Manager in PC 27, and I think that happened yesterday actually. But you'll be able to see that online, through the webcasts.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about future. So we talked about the control toolkit today. And you heard a little bit about what we're doing in 2009, 2010 with Blend 3.0, Win 7, and so forth. Let me just sort of give you a couple highlights of what those improvements are. So we can probably categorize these in terms of these three things: stronger basics, immersive UX, or just innovation, and then tools. On the basics side, we're making a bunch of text clarity enhancements using something called direct write. What we've heard is, hardware accelerated subpixel clear type is really great for a lot of scenarios, but it's not great for all the scenarios. There are some scenarios where you have a lot of small text in the UI, or very small East Asian text, where rendering that text on subpixel boundaries actually gets a little muddled. So we're making some improvements to make the text much, much sharper, and that's a big investment for us. App and framework deployment, as I mentioned, we're going to keep investing there because deployment is a number one or a very important issue from developers. Okay. Okay, anyway, I'll move on. Improved interop. We're going to continue to improve our interop across the board, whether it's with HWind or other technologies. And then accessibility and localization. There's a number of improvements that we're making there without going into details. Good.
Kill lock BAML?
What's that?
Are you going to kill lock BAML?
I don't know if we're going to kill lock BAML.
Please?
Okay,
We'll
well,
make it
we'll take that under advisement. And then performance. In any release, we're making big and small performance changes in every release. It's part of our overall development process. We take performance very seriously, and I'll talk about a couple of those things. On the immersive UX side, you've heard about touch this morning. You've heard about some of our controls, common dialogues in the system. Without having to write a bunch of P invokes, it'd be really nice if you can get access to those common dialogues. We're doing that. We're continuing to improve effects and animations. Not going to go into details, nothing to announce there today, but we're doing some things there that we hope to be very interesting. And then media enhancements. We pick up some things on Win 7 like H.264 support, which will just be available to you inside of WPF. And then on the tool side, I'll go into more details, but that's a major investment for 2010. On graphics, let me just take a minute to talk about graphics, because graphics, our philosophy with graphics in WPF sort of mirrors our philosophy with WPF overall, which is, when we started WPF, we wanted to make these rich effects and great graphics much more accessible to developers. You can do a lot of really great things in a lot of other technologies, but putting it all together in a rich integrated platform that lets you build up complete user experiences was our goal. And we took a bet on the GPU in the sense that back in 2000, not all the machines were capable of rendering hardware accelerated graphics. I think today, when you go out and buy a new PC, even a low-end PC, that's much less the case, and that's going to continue to improve as hardware gets better over time. So as that happens, we're going to move more and more work to the GPU. In terms of sort of rendering quality, I mentioned that we were improving text clarity. We're also improving layout snapping in the same way, because that's been another big piece of feedback from developers. And then we're continuing to invest in that interop. So I mentioned earlier that we had done DX interop in 3.5 SP1 to allow you to compose DX content seamlessly inside of your WPF applications. Because as rich as WPF is, you can do shaders and animations, all those things. The focus there is on integration in a platform. If you want to get super graphics and in terms of super scalable, high performance graphics in the way that there's nothing that can beat something like DX. And so there's this technology called XNA, which is a managed API on top of DirectX, which is very, very thin. So it has a lot of the same performance characteristics as DX itself. And so we whipped up this prototype. And basically what I have here is a simple WPF form application with a few buttons on it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring up some XNA DX content here. And it's just rendering this light particle thingy. It's following my mouse. And the cool part about this is, as I'm moving this around, the WPF UI, you can see that there's no seams here. There's no glitching or anything like that. It's just very smooth and integrated. And as I move this over the text, you can see it happens underneath the text. And I'm going to go underneath this button here, or I guess I go over this button. And then I'm going to go under that button. And you can see that the mouse effects, the hover effects over the buttons are still intact. And they're still functional buttons. And so we can get that level of integration where we can weave the effect in through the UI elements. So we're not ready to ship this yet, but this is the level of integration that we're going for with something like DX and other technologies to allow you to compose, as Anson was saying earlier, very rich user experiences, while at the same time we're continuing to we're continuing to improve WPF itself in terms of richness. Now, we have a super long list of things in the graphic space that we're going to be investing in, and really, it's a matter of what we do first and when. And so this is the part where you guys come in, you folks come in, to let us know what sort of things you want to do and what you'd like for us to do in any given release. So these are some of the things that we're looking at. I'm not promising that we're going to get all these things done in the next few months, but this is the kind of things that we're doing. If you want to hear more about graphics in general and get some cool demos and deep dive into effects and DX Interrupt, things like that, go to David Teitelbaum's session, this PC07 on Thursday.
So for modern applications, being able to show video and media is just as important as all the graphics innovations here. What I'd like to do here is to spend a moment kind of showing what some people are already doing with video on our current platform. So Blockbuster has this application called Movie Link. It allows their subscriber to purchase and rent movies on demand. And Blockbuster is very experienced. Is very experienced in delivering video on demand. And one of their criteria is to have this really interactive, immersive experience, so that you can have a really good kind of movie viewing experience. So the movies are downloaded to your computer so that you can replay your movie as well as kind of take it on the road with you. So here they are using, it's a really good example of kind of the software plus services. They're using the web to let you kind of select and choose the titles. They download these movies onto your local machine, and you can see a library that allows you to kind of sort your collection of movies as well. And for downloading, a lot of the customers are will take this on the road with them on business or with their families. So being able to kind of accommodate different levels of connectivity, being able to kind of pause my download as I'm kind of running to get my plane from the airport is very important. So here I've started downloading this movie. This is Kevin's laptop, so the choice of movie is not mine. So I paused the download, but even partially downloaded, I can go and start playing the video. And this is great. I mean, this really kind of shows you where offline capabilities really adds to this type of media experience. And they wanted a really immersive application, so you can go and show the movie as a full screen, in the window view as you saw it before. And my favorite kind of mini view, so that I can kind of catch up on my movie while I'm working.
So that's what you're doing. There you go.
So for Blockbuster, they are in some ways at the mercy of all the content providers. So being able to have a very robust DRM experience is very important, and our media infrastructure helps with that. And we can also show the devices. I think that's great. Oh,
just
shall we start the movie?
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, we're pressed for time. I'm sure we'd all like to watch Zohan or whatever it is. We just. Get back to normal view.
So here they have this tab which allows them to move the movies that they have rented or purchased onto portable devices, which is great for people who travels a lot. And I think this particular application was built on WPF 3.5 SP1. They're almost ready to release this, right? So. Yeah.
Okay, so I was talking with Scott Stanfield about media, and he was telling me about this cool prototype he had a couple weeks ago, and I liked it. So I said, why don't you come up on my talk and show it a little bit? We've only got a few minutes, but can you show it off a little bit? Tell us how you built it.
Well, let's see. We've got all this advanced technology, and it all comes down to whether or not we can actually switch the video screen. Let's see. So
I'm
it should be
sure
on
Windows
D.
7 will
Oh,
help
already
on this
pressed it.
one.
Oh, yeah, I need that. What was it? Windows P command? Laptop 2, right? Da-da-da.
Are we good?
Not yet. Hold on. It's because of this, isn't it?
I wish they built better hardware.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay.
Come back to me in a minute.
Yeah,
Can
we'll
we
come
talk
back
for
to you in a minute.
I'm actually going to boot with this connector. That'll work. But can you leave it on me? We'll just talk? No, it's going to be too long.
We'll come back to that.
So XAML. So as you're a WPF developer, so you're pretty familiar with XAML as the markup language for declarative UIs. But it's really more than that. Even when we first built designed XAML, we really looked at it as a general mechanism for building and initializing CLR object trees. And in fact, now XAML is really becoming the lingua franca for interop and in the .NET platform. We're using XAML in obviously WPF, Silverlight, Workflow Foundation, and WCS, CF. And in fact, in the .NET 4 timeframe, we have a standalone XAML parser. As well as kind of new APIs to let you have access to like BAML, reading and writing BAML. And I wouldn't go into a lot of details here, but there's a session. Rob Relea has a session on the new XAML infrastructure, TL36. And we have also published the WPF vocabulary for XAML, as well as the XAML specification online, this summer. And you can go and take a look at that for reference.
Okay, let's talk about tools real quick. Visual Studio 2005, we had virtually no tools for WPF, and then in the 2008 update, we introduced the WPF Designer, as I mentioned, and in 2010, we're making a big investment in the WPF Designer experience, and our goal there is, frankly, to bring the rapid application development experience to WPF inside of Visual Studio. And some of that is bringing it on par with what we have for things like WinForms, and some of it is bringing the designer experience up to sort of making use of the WPF-specific features like layout and the specific things around data binding. And so we're making a bunch of investments there, so you can spend less time hand-cranking XAML, although I know a lot of us like to do that, and more time just getting things done in the most productive way possible. So it's not an either-or thing. The goal is to allow you to use the tool and then dive into XAML sort of when you need to. And so things like this, the kind of things that we're doing here include sort of a drag-and-drop data binding experience for your forms so that you can set up master and detail really easily with a few clicks. It's sample data so that you can preview what your application experience is going to look like without having to sort of hook it up to live data. And then on the layout side, WPF has all these cool layout containers and things for allowing you to create really scalable UIs that work really great as a user experience on these screens of various sizes. And the designer that we had before just didn't account for that. So you would basically draw some stuff on the screen and then have to bail out into the XAML to hand tweak that stuff. So we put a big investment there to make it possible for you to use the designer to achieve those auto-sizing layouts. And then property editing. For things like color, you'll be able to use a nice property grid like you'd expect, or property pane like you'd expect inside of Blend or WinForms experience with WPF, as well as access to those properties in line within the code itself. And then finally, we're doing some work around the user experience for managing the resources within your applications, because WPF enables all this cool stuff with styling and resources and stuff, but it just wasn't accounted for in the previous tool. So a bunch of improvements there. I won't go into more detail because we don't have time, but there's a session on that. It's PC 45. I encourage you to go there and give them your feedback and take a look at that, because we want that to be really great. That's a sort of a screenshot of what you'll see on Thursday.
So, as you've seen, people are now building, these really large applications in WPF, whether it's for ISV or for enterprise customers. And a lot of these applications are composite applications where, you bring together individual pieces of user interface or functionality and put them together. And WPF already has a very good kind of foundation for these applications. We have data binding, which helps you separate your view from your models. We have resource inheritance, which allows you to kind of share your resources, from parts of the UI that hasn't come into it yet. As part of what we're doing with Visual Studio 10, we're using WPF for the editor. And in Scott's keynote today, you saw how WPF with like auto layout and to be able to kind of embed all sorts of different elements, makes the editor much more extensible than before. And underlying all that was the managed extensibility framework, which allows you to kind of if you like rendezvous different types of components together. And we're working with that team to make sure that that there is the equivalent of that type of experience with WPF for the user interface as well. On the note of kind of large applications, testing, performance, all these kind of fundamentals are really critical, to building high-quality applications. And with the upcoming Visual Studio Team systems, there'll be a lot of support for WPF type applications, for testing WPF applications, for running unit tests, as well as kind of performance profiling. To help you kind of navigate through, how to build really high quality WPF applications. We have a WPF application quality guide that we've put online that really kind of puts together a lot of these, a lot of information about, testing, localization, etc. And please do go ahead and kind of, take a look at, all the work that we kind of put into that.
We're going to click through because we're running out of time.
Okay.
We've only got a few minutes left, and I want to make sure that we get to all the things that you need to hear about today. So controls, you heard a lot about controls that we're releasing today. We got the ribbon CTP today, and we're going to continue to improve that and ship that. And then in terms of future controls, there are a number of things that we may be doing. We haven't decided exactly what we're doing for some of these things, so these are not contracts or promises for 4.0. But this is the sort of thing that we're going to do. Because for WPF, we need to have a certain set of controls in the platform that will enable you to be successful. And then there's a certain number of controls that we'll do that are particularly innovative or something like that, where it fits with our overall theme for the release. And we'll continue to invest there. But WPF has a rich component model. And our job, we don't see ourselves... It is our job to invent or to create every last control. There's a rich ecosystem of component vendors out there doing some really great things with the platform, whether it's a 3D panel for shopping or other types of panels and controls and calendar controls and whatnot. There's a bunch of cool stuff out there, and so we're not going to do all those things. And, our data grid even is as great as it is. There are data grids out there that build on top of that experience with a lot more features and functionality that you can take advantage of. So that will continue, and we'll continue to hopefully make those folks successful on our platform. And then for Windows 7, just real briefly, because it was covered very well during the keynote this morning, touch and multi-touch. We're going to be doing a bunch of work with the Surface team and with the Windows Touch team, and making that available in terms of an SDK that you can build really great touch experiences with WPF on Windows. look for that to look for that more information in the coming months on that. And the taskbar that you saw this morning, the ribbon, the common dialogues, and more stuff that we didn't talk about today. So the goal there is to make sure that WPF is a really great client platform for exploiting all the benefits in Windows 7. Are you ready?
Yeah, let me just switch over here. Just to bring up a session score, we got to show more code.
Did you get it?
Are we showing it? I'm using the
Oh, you already got it?
C.
Coming? Good.
Hey, Windows 7 works. So this is an example of kind of a multi-touch application, and I'm using the Dell Latitude XT. It actually has multi-touch support, although the driver is still working on a driver. So in this case, I have a video here playing on a grid, and I can kind of pick it up and move it, and now I'm using 2 fingers. I can kind of whoa. It's a little bouncier than I expected. So you can see that you can really kind of use touch for very interactive user experience.
Let me move this out of the way so you can see what he's doing with his fingers while he's messing with it.
So let's take a look at what it takes to write something like that. And obviously, there is some magic behind, the physics of the cloth and stuff. And in fact, I took that as, one of my colleagues, demo, and I don't fully understand how that works. But I want to show you what I did. I want to show you what I did to actually hook up, the touch. And this is the level of coding I can do. So here I'm in the, I'm in the constructor, of the window, and if we go through it, I'm doing a bunch of initialization, bringing up a media element, to put it in Visual Brush, which is what you saw. And in fact, you can put anything in it. You can put your data grid in it, if you want. And here, okay, now we're down to the code that actually, does work. So we're incorporating, touch events into the base UI elements. So here I'm hooking up the touch down, touch move, and touch up events. So these are very much equivalent to like the stylus down, up, and move, or the mouse up and move. And for the and let's go into the code itself. So on the touchdown code, we're going to capture the particular touch device, which is the particular contact, the particular finger that I have. I'm going to capture that on this particular control. And I have some code here that kind of basically tracks this, which is this touch contact. And what's interesting here is the event argument has the touch device as an ID. So this is how we use to distinguish the various individual touch contacts that we have. This ID kind of identifies that. And here we're just kind of stashing that into a dictionary. And and when we're moving, we're going to go and say, hey, is this touch point already there? Pull it out from the dictionary and kind of pass it magically to the grid, which knows how to kind of move one of the points around. And in the case of touch up, again, I'm going to see, hey, is one of these contacts already there? I'm going to remove it from my list, and I'm going to import it from a grid, and I'm going to capture it. So the point here is not to kind of show you my, coding prowess, but kind of show you how easy it is to actually incorporate, touch into your application. And you can see, and because we have this separate touch infrastructure, you can actually build things like, hey, I'm using a stylus, for painting. I'm going to use my fingers to help me kind of resize and pan pan your canvas. So there's a lot of, it opens up a lot of possibility from your user experience perspective. We're really excited about it.
Okay, so real quick, you saw the, come on back to me.
Oh, I unplugged you.
You unplugged me.
I unplugged you.
Okay, well let me go back to you saw the demo that Scott had with the photo app this morning. That actually is part of a multimedia starter kit that we're making available to you, so you can build these kind of, let's see. Good. Okay. So this is the application, It's actually a pretty full, fleshed out application. It does lots of cool things. I don't have time to go into all the details for it today, especially. But things like, I'll just take you through a couple things. Things like templated UIs, so that the app looks great at any screen size, whether you have a landscape size or a very, this resolution only for this projector only gets to a certain point. But if I could continue to make it bigger, you could see that we pull in more and more UI elements to make a rich experience. And then navigation, really simple, seamless, fast navigation. We have a nice little image effect across the top when we're navigating around. We have cool things like integrated document support, so that, by the way, I'm just changing the theme, hitting Control-T, or I can go to the application menu and I can change the theme of the application, just like you saw on stage. That's just using standard WPF conventions for theming, and that's very powerful. So theming goes way beyond just changing the colors. You can actually change fundamentally the user experience of the application. In this case, we were pulling in the touch scatter view-like thing. All the same data, the same business logic behind the scenes, with the exception of the viewer control, and you can switch between them pretty seamlessly. That's the power of these kind of things. So taking advantage of this toolkit is going to be as simple as using WCF to point at a SQL database to pull in content into this application. So it's really quick to build these kind of multimedia applications. Okay, with that, I want to just quickly wrap up while Scott is trying to get his machine works. Can you
just press the laptop too, see if it comes up? That's what I need.
Yes.
Okay.
That's laptop.
Your
D. Okay. So, summary. You've heard today that about what we've done recently with 3.5 and SP1, and what we're releasing today in terms of the toolkit, the VSM, and so forth. And that's available today. Please do check that out. And you've got a glimpse of what we're doing with .NET 4.0 and Visual Studio 2010 and beyond. Our goal is to continue to take your input and to improve the platform as fast as possible, taking your input to guide us. So with that, while Scott is booting up here, we'll hopefully get that demo in at the end. Please, let's do questions. And please, I was asked to remind you to please keep it to one question so we can get to more people. Yes?
I'll just stay in line for my other questions, but here you go. Are we ever going to be able to paste like WPF scalable graphics into Office applications?
Yes, that is a very common request, and yeah, I can't promise it for 4.0, but we'll definitely look at that. That is something that people have been asking for a while.
Okay, go to that side.
Yep.
If you notice some unexpected behavior in your XAML, what do you have available to you in Visual Studio to debug? Do you have a breakpoint available? What can you do?
Yeah, in Service Pack 1. So in Service Pack 1, there, when you have like an error exception in XAML, you actually see it in the actually jump you to the XAML itself as opposed to kind of the init component. In Visual Studio 10, we're also kind of working through kind of more, debugger support, visualization, as well as various things, for WPF applications. So, I'm not going to go through all the details there, but there'll be new features coming out, to help that type of debugging.
Okay, well, we're going to definitely take all your questions afterwards. I wanted to give Scott just 3 minutes to do his demo. But if you're leaving, thanks for coming.
And
we'll
don't
follow up
forget
with you offline.
the evaluation. I've been asked to.
Yeah, I'll be real quick, guys. This is, we wanted to see how far, we're doing a project for a client, and they didn't believe that WPF had the horsepower to really show a lot of high-def video at once. In fact, they had a consultant that said, you'd be lucky to get WPF to show 2 high-def streams. And I thought, I want to prove to them that they're wrong. And it also gave me a chance to buy this really cool piece of hardware. But it also weighs about 35 pounds. It's got a kilowatt power supply. It's water-cooled. We did not pull any punches with this. And because it's so large, we figured it's probably a bit more reliable than this today. But we did a little video of it, and you'll see why. out the box. It's all set up. It's really fast, by the way. So this is the Alienware. Showed you a picture of it down there. What I have here are, you can zoom in with your thumb, by the way. You can zoom in. I have some high-def videos here. And we have a program that Microsoft helped us write to do the testing. This program can stretch across all 3 monitors when I hit maximize. So it's now running all the way across here. And then I can just start opening videos. We didn't hook up the speakers. Check this out. So here's a high-def video. It's 720p, so it's true high-def. And it'll, make sure you zoom in a little bit on this. It can easily span across the monitor boundaries, no problem. It's totally fast. Not only that, I can zoom in and out with the wheel. Check that out. So I'm zoomed in and out on this video, and it totally rocks. Now, I can take that and park it over here and open up another one. So let's open up that one, put that here, open up Speed, open up Discoverers, open up Coral Reef. Not only that, all these have an alpha channel on top of them, so you can still kind of see through, so, which is even more difficult to do. So we're able to get some kind of blending. And we even have, watch, I can take it and just kind of flick it, and it kind of floats. You see that, Mike? So when I spin it, or just kind of let go, it still kind of follows. So if we can do this with high-def video running at 24 frames per second, we can do it with pictures. These 3 monitors, each one of these are 1920 by 1200. This actually exceeds the resolution from what our understanding is, or it's identical to what the 3 screens we have on the wall in Vegas. So, as we suspected, WPF did not have a
Okay, thank you very much. We'll take your questions afterwards.
Thanks.
Cool.